Failbook, Victor Freitas asks, what is or was your favorite MMO? You know, it's times like these, like a lot of you I'm sure, that I sincerely wish that I hadn't treated video game discs as disposable commodities in the late 90s. Because I was formerly the owner of the actual fucking game box, I assure you. But my favorite MMORPG to this day remains, without question, Asheron's Call, which I was a subscriber to for fucking years. And which I hear is still going strong today. Made by Turbine, the very same company that made Lord of the Rings Online, which, for my money, is one of the few MMOs that's actually worth playing today. Something most Rageaholics don't actually know about me, given that I rarely touch on the subject of MMORPGs, is that I actually hit on the online MMO gaming craze fairly early in its incubation period. I dabbled in Meridian 59, and I was actually an early subscriber to a service called GameStorm back around 96, 97. Basically, the fucking deal with GameStorm was you pay $15 a month, and you get to play any one of a dozen or so massively multiplayer online games from numerous genres, mind you, via the GameStorm service. And at first glance, you might say, well, fuck me sideways, that sounds just like Gamefly or some shit. But what set GameStorm apart from any service that preceded or succeeded it was that all of the software on GameStorm was exclusive to that platform. Ever play a game called Multiplayer Battletech? Of course you fucking didn't, because you couldn't play that shit unless you subscribed to motherfucking GameStorm. And believe me, you wish you did, because that game rocked my fucking nuts for a fact. But a game that doesn't get mentioned nearly enough when discussing early MMORPGs is a GameStorm exclusive title that I personally sank countless hours into, and that was Legends of Kesmai. It was a 2D, isometric, and grid-based game, but fuck was it rad. I'm dating the shit out of myself here, but via GameStorm I actually witnessed firsthand the evolution of the term noob, as early in the GameStorm days, for anyone who just hopped off the boat onto Multiplayer Battletech or Silent Death Online, the relevant colloquialism was the term newbie, right? And somewhere along the way, that just full-on turned into noob, and newbie just went the fuck away, right? Now, if you need me, I'll be swilling Geritol and stewing my arthritic joints in Epsom salts, because I feel about 1,005 years old right now. Via YouTube, Evan Robertson asks, hey man, I've heard it mentioned in the past that you like space sims, thus I'm wondering what thoughts, if any, do you have about the up-and-coming Star Citizen? As with anything generated by the video game industry in the last 5 years, even and perhaps especially the crowdfunded one, I find the most apropos response is cautious optimism. Look, I like Chris Roberts. The Wing Commander series is one of the industry's crown jewels, and without it, you can kiss things like branching narrative and even basic things like cinematic fucking cutscenes right the fuck goodbye. But he's like the Judas Priest of video games. Sure, they cranked out Defenders of the Faith, but they also pinched out a shapely, corn kernel bespectacled log by the name of Nostradamus. Remember that? Concluding the analog, you may have made Wing Commander 4, Mr. Roberts, but you also directed the Wing Commander film adaptation, sir. And spouting utter pablum like, Star Citizen would not be possible on current-gen hardware, while showcasing mind-blowing in-engine footage that wouldn't look at all out of place in Dead Space fucking 1? It's not doing much to decrease the sensitivity of my bullshit detectors, Mr. Roberts. Sounds awesome, but I'll believe it when I see it. Via Failbook, Robert DeWitt Sando asks, what's some good black metal for beginners besides Bathory and Darkthrone? The first two Sodom records are some classic first-wave black metal. On the newer side, Judas Iscariot, especially the Heaven in Flames and To Embrace the Corpse's Bleeding records. Hellhammer's entire 3-demo discography. Finnish band by the name of Horna, particularly the Envatnags Efrosolf Eskantavne and Sotahuto albums. I won't even pretend I'm pronouncing either of those titles correctly, particularly since one of them is just fucking gibberish from what I understand. Sargeist's entire discography, another Finnish band, and for one thing, Venom, motherfucker. And nobody in the comments section give me that hackneyed shit of, oh, Venom only invented the term black metal. Bathory invented the music. No, assload, Venom invented the music too. Guttural vocals, tremolo guitar picking, fuck, even blast beats is all fucking there in the first 3 Venom records and demos. As early as, what was it, 1979? If Bathory is black metal... then so is fucking Venom. Fuck your shit, metalarchives.com. Via Tumblr, Frosty Hot Sauce inquires 2 questions. What is your favorite Pokemon? Onyx Master Race, bitch. 2. What is your opinion on the Phantasy Star franchise? With an upfront admission that I haven't fucking played one since the days of the Sega fucking Genesis, which I never owned. A little bit of trivia for the Rageaholics out there. The classic Phantasy Star titles, that is to say 1 through 4, I'd put them in the same stratosphere Breath of Fire currently inhabits in my personal JRPG pantheon, which is oddly appropriate because both franchises are deader than Betty White's Rolodex. Phantasy Star 4 was one of the most incredible video game conclusions I've ever encountered. Just a brilliant RPG on every conceivable level. If we're all very good, say our prayers, consume our vitamins, and sacrifice 1 child each to Shigeru Miyamoto's oily forehead and Meg Ryan haircut, instead of gimmicky vapid trash like Demon Souls being extolled as titans of the genre, one day, JRPGs will be as good as Phantasy Star 4 and Breath of Fire 2 again. This I promise you, Rageaholics. Via YouTube, Zugzugzwan asks, too many fucking questions, so let's lose at least one of the fuckers. Dear RazörFist, 1. What's your favorite written work, be it short story, novel, essay, etc.? Watership Down by Richard Adams. Next. 2. How difficult was it for you to learn Japanese and French? How were you taught those languages? They were fairly taught. Look, I wouldn't say I've learned French, I'm still very much learning it, but Japanese took about 3 years of high school study, with an additional 2 years in college, and I'm still learning. Remember, you only ever stop learning a language when you're content with sounding like the Japanese equivalent of the irate gamer. Next. 3. Who's got the better fighters, SNK or Capcom? How's this even a question, people? SN fucking K. Look, when you log your dumpy ass into GGPO, how many motherfuckers are congregated in the Street Fighter matchmaking rooms? Dozens? And in the King of Fighters rooms? What's that, hundreds? And all the motherfuckers in the King of Fighters rooms are from where? The States? Are they from EVO, the kiddie pool of the tournament scene? The glorified Capcom advertising convention where Super Turbo, the game EVO, was fucking founded on, and the original Asian tournament scene was fucking built around, takes a back seat to trash like Street Fighter X Tekken, where we make doubly fucking sure to feature Soul Calibur 5 just because it's new and Namco's paying us a shitload of money, while simultaneously teabagging genuinely deep competitive experiences like Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown? No, these motherfuckers are from Korea and Japan, where they pass people like Mike Ross and Viscount around like a pack of cigarettes in a fucking pen. SNK wins, flawless victory. Via Tumblr, Unbox TV asked, when it comes to Nintendo's situation in today's gaming scene, why are there so many people convinced the big N needs to go third party or develop smart devices because of the apparent gold mine in developing for a device that will barely last 9 months? Simply put, because everyone's an armchair analyst nowadays, myself very much included. What I hope separates myself from other less reputable purveyors of the immutably obvious is that I routinely admit when I require further information to form a more cogent opinion from. Look at the swirling maelstrom of negativity surrounding the Wii U, for example. For me, cultivating an opinion from the hostile soil of 2013's dive-bombing gaming market, much less from a sample as brief as 6 fucking months, is an exercise in ignorance. Nintendo survived the Virtual Boy, the Genesis SNES console war, the N64, the GameCube, and a third-party Nintendo drought that is rapidly approaching the 10-year mark, people. They'll survive their latest foray to the depths of commissary torment and emerge from the other side with enough cash to buy and sell you, me, and the entire IGN editorial staff, for whatever brief duration that IGN manages to remain in fucking business, that is. And they'll buy and sell us all well into the 22nd fucking century. Nintendo is the New York Yankees of gaming. They aren't going any fucking where. People counted them out after the GameCube, and they responded with the most lucrative console launch of all time. Sorry. A console launch, I'd hasten to remind you, that we're only 7 years fucking removed from. It's not like with Sega, where The last vestiges of their waning relevance faded when the bit count on current-gen consoles outgrew the double digits. We're less than 4 years removed from Nintendo's biggest successes, which is half as long as the last time Sony was fucking relevant, so shut the fuck up and try doomsaying when there's some actual doom to fucking say. You bitches hopped on the Xbox One hate bandwagon after one incredibly vague press conference while I shouted that I required more information. How'd that turn out for you, fuckbags? Oh, but we're just holding Nintendo's feet to the fire. If we hadn't cried and fucking complained about the Xbox One, they never would have changed. Yeah, motherfucker! What do you suppose is more likely? That you throwing a bitch fit on Twitter changed the Xbox One? Or that the full 1% drop in Microsoft's stock price a full day and a half before you hashed your first tag and leapt into the corral with the rest of the bleeding sheep changed their mind? Because unlike you, the stockholders actually own a fucking piece of Microsoft, you gibbering, witless retards. I complain about Deus Ex Human Revolution's piss yellow highlight prior to that game's launch, and Eidos Montreal just coincidentally happened to wind up making that feature optional. Arrogant and self-righteous as I am not yet self-deceived enough to convince myself that my recording a fucking vlog on the subject is what ultimately changed Eidos' fucking mind for him. Poke your head up from the Unix circle jerk at 4chan and Reddit for 5 minutes, and then ask yourself if you changed a measly fucking thing. You're not holding Nintendo's feet to shit. The only thing on fire are your pants. You're a cranky mob, replete with pitchforks, and the only purpose you serve is hoodwinking yourselves into believing you're actually doing something that fucking matters. I'm RazörFist. God fucking speed.